All right, that was from a press conference earlier this morning, or really just brief remarks to reporters from some of the senior cabinet officials, including Vice President Dick Cheney, meeting with President Bush as they sort of lay out their game plan. But part of that press conference was President Bush outlining that Osama bin Laden is now prime suspect number one for these terrorist attacks on our nation back on Tuesday. Joining us now from Jerusalem with reaction to all of this, Israel's former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Mr. Prime Minister, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
What do you think of that? We've apparently been able to target as close to unequivocally as we can that it's Osama bin Laden.
Well, I think that he's already proved that he's a killer with the previous terrorist attacks, some of them quite grisly on the embassies, your embassies in Africa and elsewhere. And what we see is this: if you don't stop terrorism, it grows deadlier and deadlier and deadlier. And indeed, as horrible as the leveling of the World Trade Center in New York and the thousands of innocent people who died there, this grisly death, there will be more and worse, because Osama bin Laden is just one branch of a terror network that some of whose key states are acquiring nuclear weapons. They're developing it feverishly as we speak. So if this is not stopped, it will keep on escalating. And I think the issue here is not just getting Osama bin Laden, eliminating him and his network, but eliminating the entire network before it's too late. And I think President Bush has it exactly right. He's called for a broad and sustained war on terrorism until terrorism is rooted out, and we have to do it.
Do you believe his attack should go way beyond just Osama bin Laden's strongholds? That the feeling seems to be that this should go much wider.
Well, there is no terrorism without states. Let me repeat that, because I think people don't get the main point. There is no possibility of any sustained terror effort against any one of our countries without regimes that give the terrorists safe haven, territory from which to strike, to plan their attacks, to arm themselves, to train their operatives, to hide. All of that is absolutely essential. You just don't have terrorists suspended in midair. And if they didn't have home states to have this kind of headquarters, they simply could not operate it. They'd be eliminated fairly quickly.
Well, who then are likely? Who then are likely culprits? Who are likely host states?
Well, you certainly have one obvious one, and that's the Taliban faction of Afghanistan, because they make no point. They don't even hide the fact that they've entertained
Understood, sir. But I'm talking beyond that.
Well, obviously Iran, which is the fount of inspiration for this militant Islamic fanaticism, which, by the way, does a great injustice to the hundreds of millions of Muslims around the world who have no part in this, who are peaceful and law-abiding. But this is a virulent strain that spews forth right from Iran. The establishment of the Khomeiniist regime in Iran 21 years ago was a turning point in the eruption of this militancy. It's wedded with terror. And that is the consequence of what we're seeing today. Iran is developing now ballistic missiles. Those ballistic missiles can now certainly overreach Israel, but they can head into Europe. Their plan is to have, within 12 to 15 years, ballistic missiles that can reach the eastern seaboard of the United States. They have a very feverish program that they're working on to equip those missiles with nuclear warheads. Do you want to wait for that? That is where the greatest terror will come. So I think speaking about bin Laden is obvious, because it appears that he was the actual perpetrator here. But you have a much larger phenomena of Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq too, where Saddam Hussein is developing ballistic missiles, already has them, and he's developing nuclear weapons. Some Middle Eastern states, the Hezbollah group in Lebanon, and the sundry terrorist groups under Arafat, who enjoy his protection, and in fact where they learn the technique of suicide bombing in Arafat's summer camps for Palestinians. That's where they're teaching children to become suicide bombers. So I think we have to understand there's this network that gives sustenance, support. What sustenance, support? Hell, can I be much blunter? I'm holding a cable in my hand that I was just given here entering the studio, in which one of the news agencies says that they regrettably cannot show a picture of a protester or a demonstrator, if you will, in Ramallah, in Arafat's area, carrying bin Laden. They say that they cannot make it, they cannot provide it. You know why they cannot provide it to the various clients? That's what they say. The clients are are unable to receive the 35 seconds of the Ramallah march showing one poster carrying a picture of Osama bin Laden. That's what I'm holding in my hand right here. Okay, now you know why they can't do that? Because Arafat is threatening them. They're telling these crews that if you show the truth, that we have been supporting this kind of insanity, we have been supporting this kind of fanaticism, we're part and parcel, morally and in many other ways, with this kind of terrorism. In fact, we are the terror base in the heart of the Middle East. That's what Arafat's base is. Then we will shoot you.
All right, but let's step back,
Mr.
Prime Minister. Let's step back from the implications of all of this. Let's say everything you said is right, and you have to go after Iran, you have to go after Iraq, you maybe have to go right after Arafat. I mean, you are talking what the president is talking about: a sustained battle, an outright world war, right?
I don't think it's going to come to the scale of what we experienced when the United States and its democratic allies sought to root out another hate-filled ideology, Nazism, because Germany and Japan were much more powerful than these states. These states are not strong today. They have the will to destroy our civilization, but they don't have the power. Today we have the power to crush this militant terrorism. But we have to show that we have the will, and I think uprooting the terror network is exactly what we're talking about.
But sir, I guess
we can't go back to business as usual.
I understand, sir, but I guess what I'm not clear on is, yes, you're right. I mean, maybe it might not be on a scale of going after Nazi Germany, but there at least we knew it was Nazi Germany. There at least we knew it was fascist forces in Italy. There at least we knew it was Japan. Here, it's like the cockroach there. We kind of suspect, we know, but we really don't know for sure where, when, or how. So it's really an ongoing campaign, right?
I just disagree. Yes, but I disagree. I think we do know. I think we know very well who practices terrorism and who supports terrorism. You know, in the 19th century, the civilized powers sought to eradicate piracy. Piracy was very cruel, unlike the Hollywood movies. I mean, they'd capture people, they'd butcher them, they'd do terrible things, hold them for ransom and then kill them. And the United States and Britain adopted a policy that says that piracy everywhere, whether in the Caribbean or in the Mediterranean or in the Atlantic, is a crime against humanity. The pirates are enemies of humanity, and anybody who harbors pirates is going to be taken out too. And that's what they did, and piracy became a thing of the past. We have now something far, far, far worse than piracy, something that topples buildings. Tomorrow will topple entire cities and hold an entire civilization hostage, and will bring it to its knees. So the question is, how do you treat that phenomenon? You don't say, well, I have to go after the act of piracy that was committed in one part. No. President Bush is right. He says we have to eradicate terrorism. I heard Prime Minister Tony Blair saying we have to eradicate terrorism. We have to wipe it from the face of the earth. Exactly right. Because this terror network has to be eliminated, or we will face nuclear weapons in the hands of terrorist states very soon, a lot sooner, by the way.
Then, sir, let me ask you this. You were not shy when you were Prime Minister, responding force with force. You were a tough, decisive Prime Minister. Following you, also following force with force, Prime Minister Barack, now Prime Minister Sharon. And yet we keep having these incidents. I don't know what the answer is, and maybe seeking out, weeding out this network, as you call it, way beyond just the obvious culprits. But to what end? In other words, I raised with a U.S. general earlier, sir, this notion that we attack them. The general says, be prepared for an attack against us, and on and on and on. To what end? Where does all of this go?
I disagree. I think you may have an exchange of blows, but I think at the end of the day you have to bring down the terror regimes that make this possible. There could be new forms of government emerging there. It happened in other totalitarian regimes. It happened, I gave the two examples of Germany and Japan. After the defeat, democracy prevailed in both countries. I don't know if you'll have democracy here, but the first thing you'll have is life. The first thing is we will protect our life because we will dismantle the engines of death, far greater death that they're building. And the second thing that might happen is that we might forge a path to freedom and to democracy, or more liberal and more humane government in these regimes. I think if we just let these things fester on, grow, and acquire more and more power, they will use that power against us, because the core, the nexus of this terror network are the ideologies of destruction. We're facing a branch of it, the Arafat ideology of destroying Israel. He doesn't want peace with Israel. We could have had peace years ago. It's not a problem. But he wants the hills above Tel Aviv in order to drive us into the sea, and that's what he tells his people. That's what he tells this protester who's holding bin Laden's picture in the streets of Ramallah.
But let's go to the next level.
But I believe...
Right.
But I believe, Neil, please, I think this is important. Understand, they will come back and get you because the Islamic militancy wants to reverse history. They want to reverse the rise of the West. They want to reverse what they consider the retreat of Islam. And so they will attack America because they want to either destroy it or bring it to its knees, and they will attack again.
Will they attack? Will they attack with nuclear weapons? That's a big fear in this country. Do they have them? What do you suspect?
I want to ask you something. Do you think deterrence is going to work? A, they're building it. First of all, to answer your question directly, they're building it feverishly fast, as fast as they can, in Iran and Iraq, and both our countries have solid intelligence on this. Second point, these were people, about 20 people, probably more, by the way, were willing to kill themselves, and in fact, almost 20 killed themselves in suicide bombing. So you have to understand that deterrence doesn't work. Deterrence worked against the Soviets because they put their life above ideology. These people put their ideological zeal, their fantasies, their madness above life itself. So while they might have a tactical interlude of a ceasefire, while the terrorist states might hide right now, while they'll stop using terrorists now, they won't stop in the future. They'll go back to it because you're dealing here with a mad and irrational ideology that is being pursued in an irrational way. Unlike, by the way, Soviet communism, it was irrational in its goal of world domination
and being pursued with nuclear weapons. That you think there's a good chance
but the Soviets
one or
were
two
not
of them
irrational.
All right, sir.
Are developing it. They don't have it yet, but they're developing it.
All right, Mr. Netanyahu, thank you very, very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Neil.
The former Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu.